Pour yourself a cup of joe and pull up a seat, because in today's flammable episode, science and conspiracy talk, spontaneous human combustion over coffee. Before we get into the episode, let's talk about what kind of coffee we have this week.
Yeah, all right. So today's coffee that we're drinking is actually Saltspring coffee. Now, Bob, what does Saltspring mean to you?
Well, for those of you who don't know, Saltspring is one of the Gulf Islands between Vancouver and Vancouver Island.
Yeah, so this is a local BC coffee. And we actually quite enjoy the Saltspring line. This is not an ad. However, if Saltspring wanted to sponsor us, hit us up. Or maybe we'll just go ahead and hit you up. But anyway, so today's coffee by Saltspring is Blue Heron. And Blue Heron is named for, as they say on the Saltspring Coffee website, the majestic birds found in Saltspring Island's Blue Heron Rookery. So I guess a rookery is a place for birds? Or do you know?
I'm not really sure.
Is it a swamp?
Thought he was an actor.
Michael Rooker. So this is a great coffee. It's they give it 8s across the board on body, brightness, and flavor. They say that it's got tasting notes of milk chocolate and citrus, and it's a little nutty, just like us. So we definitely enjoy this organic fair trade coffee, and we encourage you to check it out as well. So that's our coffee today for science versus conspiracy over coffee.
And if you'd like to get your own, we'll put a link in the show notes. So let's get into it here. To be honest, before researching this podcast, I didn't know too much about spontaneous human combustion, outside the pop culture references from shows like The X-Files, South Park, and of course, Spinal Tap. In Spinal Tap, they said that their former drummer spontaneous combusted while on stage. The phenomenon actually dates back to Milan in the late 1400s. However, it wasn't until the 19th century when Charles Dickens used spontaneous human combustion to kill off one of his characters in the novel Bleak House. Dickens received a lot of criticism over this because his contemporaries felt he was legitimizing something that did not exist. In response, he pointed to 30 historical cases that he had researched while writing the novel. Before long, both Mark Twain and Herman Melville also began incorporating spontaneous human combustion into their stories. More recently, and probably most famously, took place in Ireland in 2010. According to the coroner, and this was a real-life coroner-approved case of spontaneous human combustion, to this day it has medical examiners baffled. We'll put a link to the story in the show notes. On December 22nd, 2010, forensics experts found 76-year-old Michael Faherty's badly burnt body near a fireplace in a sitting room with virtually no fire damage otherwise. However, experts concluded that the fire in the fireplace was not the cause of the blaze. So if this was an actual case of spontaneous human combustion, how can it happen? What I found is that the body needs to burn for about an hour, hour and a half to 2 hours at a temperature of 1500 to 3000 degrees Celsius. This will reduce the body mostly to ashes. Because the human body is composed mostly of water, and its only flammable properties are fat tissue and methane gas, the possibility of spontaneous human combustion as an actual phenomenon seems remote. However, it has happened. Many scientists dismissed the idea of spontaneous human combustion, arguing that an undetectable flame source, such as a cigarette or a match, is the real culprit. Okay, so in most cases, forensics teams have found a cigarette or alcohol being the culprit, but in a handful of cases, there's nothing.
Yeah, that's true. And so one of these explanations could be that the fire accelerant or the incendiary device actually burns up with the victim. And so, there was one case recently enough, 1991, in the United States, where a gentleman was brought into ER and he was unconscious. And so they were going to do an investigation to find out why he was unconscious and, of course, try to make him better. While they had him on the examination table, just before they were able to start undressing him, as we have to do in ER,
Right.
To determine what kind of trauma his body might have sustained. Well, before they got him undressed, he went into a grand mal seizure. And for anybody who has never seen a seizure, your arms and legs are pretty much flailing, and pretty much everybody's seen one on TV. But I mean, it's very violent, visually violent, and
It's really disturbing.
Yeah, it is, right? It's very physically disturbing, or visually disturbing rather. And so he's in this seizure, and what people don't know is that you don't do anything to the person while they're seizing. You let it play out.
You can cause more damage by helping them, holding them down or whatever.
Exactly. So they're kind of waiting for this seizure to stop, and they see smoke rising from his abdomen.
Wow.
And so the fire was quickly extinguished. And what had happened was he had a pack of matches in his pocket. And the violent seizure had actually created enough friction and force to ignite the matches. So now, had he not been at ER when this occurred, this gentleman could have been a potential victim of this so-called spontaneous human combustion, with the incendiary device also absolutely going up with him. It would have left no trace, because if he had been left to burn, enough to burn a human body, then the matches would have also burned.
Right, so the seizure had nothing to do with anything.
No,
it was just something
he had matches
unrelated
in his pocket, right? And so, that's a lot of these cases, you're going to have matches or cigarettes.
Open flame, that sort of thing. Yeah. There are a number of historical cases that none of those were present, and they've been attributed to spontaneous human combustion, like the case in Ireland in 2010.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, this guy in Ireland, we can never really know what happened. But I think the the coroner was probably a bit of a fan of the phenomenal, the paranormal, perhaps.
That's taking a big leap, though.
I know. It is a big leap. But the thing is, isn't it a big leap to say that it's spontaneous human combustion? That's a bigger leap, because there are so many reasons why this could have occurred. And yes, he was found with only local damage, the floor underneath him, the ceiling above him, and his body. But he was laying on his back with his head close to an open fireplace. Right,
but they determined that wasn't the cause.
Yeah, yes and no, because I mean, at this point, there could have been a lit match or cigarette on him, and maybe being close to the fireplace is just a red herring, right? Perhaps, right? Maybe he had a lit match or cigarette, and then with the open fireplace, maybe with the flue open, maybe there was enough air exchange that the rest of the house didn't really catch on fire and he just burned out. Maybe he had a small fire going. And I know the medical investigators would have done all this examination and probably already ruled this out. But maybe there was a small fire going. Or maybe he just had a smoke and, fell down having a heart attack or something. And with the airflow with the fireplace, it was enough to clear it out.
Well, there was a small fire burning in him. That's why it's spontaneous human combustion.
That is that's funny. I like that. Was he an alcoholic? Right? Now people are going to say, "No, it's not the alcohol that sets on fire." And Bob, you've probably would make the same case. And that's actually pretty true. To have that amount of alcohol in your body, you'd have to be pretty pickled, I think.
Yeah.
To have that happen, to like spontaneously ignite. I think that alcoholism, when it's brought up, is again a red herring or a distractor in that sense, because people are saying, well, even if he was an alcoholic, it wouldn't ignite. But what the alcoholism is pertinent to is that, unfortunately, some of these people aren't as careful when they're drunk. Clumsy. Some people get what they used to call the DTs, the tremors, right? So having a cigarette or a fireplace or candles around, like whatever it may be, if you're drunk and you've got a source of a flame, things are bound to happen.
Right.
I think that's where the alcoholism honestly comes in. Not that they just
Not that
spontaneously ignite.
Because of the alcohol in your body, it's all absorbed and everything.
Yeah. I mean, people who do suffer from alcoholism, people who live with alcoholism, do get quite a buildup of, I believe it's acetone.
Yes.
Is it acetone?
Yep.
Which is a flammable substance. It is, but I don't think it's enough.
Right, and scientists and medical examiners have looked at that in the past, but they haven't been able to prove it scientifically.
Right. Okay. So, we can say that the alcoholism is more of a predisposing factor to this happening than a causative factor. Right? So you got a set of variables that create the kind of perfect storm for you to die in a fiery blaze and not through a car crash. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, because when the body ignites, they say that this wick effect happens, that the body burns like a candle, and that's why you get that localized burning and localized blaze.
Exactly. Yeah. So, there's actually been some scientific studies to try to replicate this. And I don't know about you, Bob, but I actually have access to peer-reviewed scientific journals.
I have access to peer-reviewed scientific journals called Wikipedia.
It's not the same kind of peer review. And if you folks want to know what actual peer review means, hit us up. I'd be happy to tell you in general people's terms, not scientific terms, because peer-reviewed journals go through a very strict set of criteria to make it to publication.
So does Wikipedia. You got to log on, create an account. You can go in and you can change it.
Before someone else
changes it back.
But, interestingly, so there have been some studies and some very actual rigid scientific investigations to replicate this kind of effect.
Let's just pause it there for a second, as I need a coffee refill, and we'll get back with the scientific explanation when we come back.
Sounds good.
We're back, got a refill of coffee, and we're here anxiously waiting Jen's scientific explanation.
Alrighty. So, Bob, you were saying about those temperatures.
Yes.
Required. Remind the folks again.
So between 1400 and 3000 degrees Celsius, that's what it takes for the body to burn. And it takes about between an hour and a half and 2 hours to turn the body into complete ash.
So did you get this number? Is this like cremation?
Yes.
Okay. Because there's actually some science to show that at different kilowatts of heat power generated, different burns can occur. And as low as 24 degrees Celsius. That's like a hot day in Vancouver. We never even get that hot. No. Okay, we do, folks. But I mean, that's a pleasant day in Vancouver. Now, let me tell you a few of these scientific facts.
Okay.
Okay? So with this cloth wick effect, or actually some scientists are suggesting that whenever there's a case of this so-called spontaneous human combustion, they start renaming it fat wick burns.
Okay.
Fat wick burns. Because it's generally the body fat of the human that would start melting, right? A tear in the skin has to occur for the melted fat to, they say, impregnate the charred clothing.
Okay.
And this wick effect can produce localized heat for a rather extended period of time. So what they've found is you can actually have a slow burn, a cloth wick in liquid fat, even like a lamp. So it can actually produce like this long sustained candle effect of a burn, such that the external source of the fire, this combustible, whatever it may be, could completely be consumed over this long period of time. And moderate-sized fires, moderate samples. Okay, actually, let me backtrack for 1 second. A significant fire that is likely to spread to other combustible materials nearby. Okay, so people who burn, the chair burns, the curtains go up in flame, the house burns. Okay, those are at least 120 kilowatts of power in the fire. But in the absence of less, or in the presence of less efficient fuels, I guess, skin and muscle, and in the absence of very large fuels, like fatty tissues. So what we're talking about here is like, what if people are really skinny?
Yeah.
Right? And they're all bone and skin, a little bit of muscle maybe, not very much fat. These kind of fires can be, 40 to 50 kilowatts, can last for hours, and there's minimal spread.
But you gotta, you gotta be, no, but you gotta have something wrong with you not to notice that your stomach's on fire.
Yeah, but I mean, that's these people who are probably either dropping dead of a heart attack.
But that's not a factor.
No, but you know what though? Like if you have a heart attack and then you burn to death, they're not going to be able to see your heart.
I guess.
To tell, right? And interestingly, when I was looking this stuff up, it's usually the torso, the middle third,
right, that's
gone. There's actually been really gruesome cases where there's like still arms and legs left, right? So, to some extent they can tell if there is another cause of death. Sometimes they can. They can tell there's what's the term? My scientific words are failing me now, but it's the carboxymethylation or something. Anyway, there's a term for when you're a burn victim, you're breathing in fire, the smoke, you get all that carbon monoxide in your bloodstream. Okay. So there's a term for that, and I'm sorry I forget it right now. So much for being a good scientist. But don't come at me, folks. But educate me. Go ahead. So, certainly if the arms and legs and the head are still present, they could determine whether that was the case, whether they were still alive during the fire.
Right.
But there are certain cases where, maybe they fell, dropped dead immediately with a heart attack. Like, heart attacks can be really, like, you can just go into asystole and drop and you're gone, right? There's different kinds of heart attacks. Well, actually, a classic heart attack is called myocardial infarction, and that's not actually what we're talking about. But so depending on what the cause of death was, then, it is actually quite possible that they drop and the fire starts and they're already dead.
So the drop, roll, drop,
Stop,
fall,
drop,
drop
and
and
roll.
roll.
That ain't gonna work.
That ain't gonna work.
Stop, drop, and roll. Yeah. So, I mean, certainly it's there's so many things that we don't consider. I actually read one case study that a gentleman who couldn't afford electric heat was using his fireplace.
Okay.
To keep the heat on, to keep the heat in, he had like nylon rope.
Okay.
Tying the bottom of his pants tight around his boots.
Okay. I think I can
You
see
know
where
where this is going, right? To keep the heat in, right? You don't want heat to escape. It's like tucking your mittens into your coat. You don't want the heat to escape, right?
Right.
So, unfortunately what happened was this gentleman then fell asleep near the fire, but not in the fire.
Right.
And what they think happened was a spark kicked out of the fireplace, ignited the nylon cord tying his pant leg. He was a skinny man who was a drinker. He ran out into the courtyard of where he lived, but he had already been aflame.
Right.
Fell, hit his head, died, and his middle part burned up because of this nylon cord. That's not spontaneous human combustion. That's a very scientific answer.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But when you see the pictures,
I
there's
guess.
actually, I don't know if anybody's interested. I could link the pictures.
Yeah, let's link some of the pictures up.
It's pretty gruesome. But you do see the pictures of this man kind of burnt up in a courtyard. And yeah.
Yeah, like no doubt there are cases that you think that are spontaneous human combustion, but then after further examination, you see that there's a nylon cord and that was the cause of it. But I still think there's still those small cases, like the man in Ireland, that can't be easily dismissed as spontaneous human combustion.
You know what I think happened with the guy in Ireland? I think the medical examiner couldn't find an answer because he didn't want to take the time to do his job, and he'd rather get a very fanatical or fantastic, rather. He wanted to get a very fantastic, in the fantasy type of use of the word, fantastic news article out there.
He's a professional. Why would they do that?
Yeah, he's probably close to retirement. Maybe he wanted to like go out with a bang. Oh, there's so many fire jokes that we could have made during this episode that we didn't. We could have played the song Fever or Fire by The Cult. So many. But who knows? Maybe he didn't want to do his job thoroughly.
That's a huge leap.
Yeah, but so is spontaneous human combustion. What do you think, folks? Let us know.
Yeah, so let's leave it there for this week on spontaneous human combustion. Join us next week when we'll be switching gears away from the paranormal and heading off into government conspiracies of MK Ultra.
Ooh, that's going to be a good one. That could probably take up several episodes.
There's lots to unpack there.
Yeah. All right. Sounds good. Hope you folks have enjoyed. Definitely, try some of that Saltspring coffee. Again, not an ad. We're just sharing. Link in the show notes. And we'll see you next time.
If you like the episode, don't forget to subscribe. You can download us on any of the major podcasting platforms. This week's episode of Science vs. Conspiracy over coffee was produced by Lethologica. Writing and research was done by Bob Homer and Jennifer Timer. See you next week, and remember, being paranoid is smart.